Hello, this is Mark of the Wicked Edge Expert Corner Group Sunday School Knife Talk. The paradox. Buying a knife, the best knife. That question. This is my attempt to answer that question. These are 210 or 8-inch chef knives. Gyutos, all different steels. Different steels. Let me see if I can get this right. See, that's the paradox. The question was proposed to a group of sharpening enthusiasts, which are often knife mavens. And it makes me chuckle because that's me. That's my chef knife collection after I gave up trying to decide which is the best chef knife. And I said, I'll settle for the Japanese chef knives because it works for me, it's comfortable, and there's a lot of varieties of steels. See, that's the question, which is the best? Are we asking which is the best to use? Which is the best to buy? Which is the best value, best to own? Or which is the best to sharpen? For me, it was trying to figure out all that stuff. So it's a balance for you guys with the boning knives. There's so many different boning knives. I don't have your particular, but this is a Dexter knife, and the Fibrox, the Victorinox, they have the same line. The F-Dick has the same sort of, they have all the different ones that get more thin, thicker here, taller here, with the offset, all that, and they're all great choices for what that knife choice was, a boning knife. They're all great choices for that. It's like, it's also colloquial. What I'm trying to say is it's local. You learn how to use what you grow up with where you are, and that's a lot of influence on the type of knives. All the different types out there, whatever's best is a personal, subjective thing, and I submit to you that any of you that are capable knife users with the boning knife may have a preference, but you could pick up any of those boning knives and do your job well with a few minutes of practice, and you would respect what the knife was. Some of them are, different. For instance, this is a Japanese boning knife, and this is another Japanese boning knife. And they're similar, but they're totally different. This one has a very straight side. This one has almost a single-sided. This is a knife that's called a Deba. It's a single-sided knife, and here's a Deba that's a 50-50 grind. And both of these are boning knives for cutting meat with bone in it. Not so much for boning meat off. Anyway, my point is there's so many of them and there's so much, but we're at a sharpening enthusiast forum. A group of people who sharpening knives where that question is presented. And what I can say to you is I, as a knife buyer, what I would buy is a knife that gives me the performance that I have, but that I can resharpen it again and again back to that same performance. And how often I need to sharpen it, that depends. I mean, you take one of these chef knives that's in ZDP 189 or HAP 40, they definitely need to be sharpened less often than a softer steel knife that might be like a Wusthof in a similar shape. But that doesn't matter. What matters is it matches your application. See, when I was fishing when I was a kid and cutting a lot of fish, I would take a knife that I sharpened, one that I knew was a sharp knife, and I could, if I had a good day, be lucky enough to clean enough fish that I went through that knife and set it down and went to another knife. And I, in a weekend, would use 3 knives in a good weekend So I knew what it took, start to use the failure with sharpening a knife. So I knew the balance and what to expect. That's what the paradox is you have to find that balance. You're obviously a sharpening enthusiast, either that or you're coming to a sharpening enthusiast forum, atmosphere, body of information to find out how to sharpen a knife that you want to know which is the best one to get. So you want to know both. It's a balance. A knife that a sushi chef uses takes more care, and then there's a difference in the steel. In the knife like you're using in a boning application, that knife, by the nature of it, is more sacrificial. It is meant to be used and to be resharpened. And if you get something that is more resistant, number one, it's harder to sharpen, and number two, when it fails differently. The harder the steel fails with giving up the steel, the softer steels fail with rolling. So that's all to be taken into consideration. But it's the paradox when the question for me is presented, which is the best knife, in a sharpening question atmosphere. Because are we asking which is the best knife to sharpen a lot? Because if I'm a knife sharpener, I want those knives like you guys are showing, like the Mora and the Dick and the Fibrox and all those, because they are recoverable knives. We know that's why these guys are suggesting those knives, is because they work real good to do that purpose, and they sharpen back. And they sharpen back again and again and again. But most of them, you'll notice, are not real expensive. So the guy that's asking the question of the paradoxical question, which is the best, and they see the price point, it often makes you wonder, well, it can't be very good because it's not really expensive. So it's the balance. That's the paradox, and we're all here trying to figure it out. I'm using this as an excuse to buy knives so I can learn about sharpening them and which is the best. The problem is there's too many of them in the broad spectrum of even boning knives. There's too many choices to get them all. So I have gravitated to the Japanese knives where I can find that variety, and that variety is steel. What I do with my knife sharpening using the Wicked Edge guided system is I try to sharpen similar knives of different steel, and I'm using all these knives only myself, and I have 2 knives in different steel, and I have by the same maker, and I have 2 knives by different maker in the same steel, so I can compare VG10 by 2 different makers, even though it's the same steel, and it may be even made by the same big factory. This is getting off the track. By the same big factory, they're hardened and tempered differently and handled differently, and they're ground differently. So I'm trying to figure out, is it the steel or is it the maker? And then I'm checking the same maker with different steels to see which steel's, trying to use this as my excuse to study this while I sharpen it and learn how to sharpen it with the different mediums and sharpen the different steels and try to match that together in the paradox of the sharpening world, which is the best knife. Thanks.